This is the second presentation of a many-part, hopefully, presentation. We were talking about doing this more frequently. And it's not really a presentation, it is actually a little workshop. So if you didn't make the first go round, it's up on the YouTube. So you may want to go back there because that's where last time I talked more about the science behind journaling, the neuroplasticity, and how it's connected to our work that we're doing as journeyers, messing with our savage DMN. And we really want to have an ongoing practice of continuing to further move our experiences in our journeys into our ordinary reality. So journaling is one way to do that. I'll say a little bit about me first. First of all, I've been doing this kind of work for all of my life, and that's a long time. So the most recent iteration of this work has been the formation of a school called the Psyalchemy Earth Star School, which is a community-based organization that empowers leaders on the forefront of conscious evolution. So essentially, we're teaching individuals how to use psychedelics consciously. And our mission is to help as many individuals wake up out of the trance of consumerism, patriarchal values, and limited conditioned beliefs. So we can really truly step into the truth of our multidimensional aliveness that is our true purpose and live in alignment with our soul's calling. This is a very high vision. It didn't come to me all at once. It came to me in parts. And so I was guided to take steps, and I took the steps one little step at a time, and it keeps growing. It's a beautiful unfolding of something that's happening through me, not by me. You know, I consider myself the visionary or the one that's holding the energies for what's happening through this, but it's certainly not mine. So if it's something you think you might want to explore more, there's more information on my website about it. And journaling is just one of the many tools that we use in conjunction with, again, the teachings of how to use psychedelics in a very conscious manner. It came out of the fact that I was witnessing a lot of people jumping into the use of psychedelics and in a way that was somewhat haphazard and not very cohesive and not very learned or educated. So that was what prompted this school. So some of the resources, again, I shared this last time, but Intensive Journal by Ira Progoff is an amazing body of work, and he has a number of books based on his work. I studied with him personally in New York City 4 or 5 decades ago. Your Brain on Ink by Kathleen Adams and Deborah Ross is a resource that I utilize throughout this work. And along those lines, the Therapeutic Writing Institute, which was formed by Kathleen Adams, that was her vision. It's actually like a little university, online university, where you can study more and go into greater depth around journal writing. So there's a science, a very clear research has been done, and a lot of the presentation last time was geared to helping us understand that research based on the idea of neuroplasticity, which we know psychedelics is supporting us in. Just a very brief definition. Again, the brain's capacity to change is largely based on how we direct our attention. So we can direct our attention towards negative things. We can direct our intention towards positive growth. And when we do that, we're entering into what we call self-directed change, which is the process of growing oneself out of negative, painful, destructive patterns, beliefs, and circumstances. And of course, we know most of us or a lot of us are using psychedelics for that end, but then journaling is another very powerful modality for supporting us doing that. So tonight, what we're going to be working with is the idea of the self-directed change, where we're bringing together our intention. So intention is a very powerful focused, it supports the focusing of energy. Energy follows thought. So when we set an intention, we're setting a thought or a movement of our energy forward, and then we pay attention to that as we move forward. And what we're going towards is we're moving forward towards a greater or higher version of ourselves. And if we continue to do this process on a regular basis, whether that's through meditating or microdosing or journal writing or art process or many other modalities. If we do it just a little bit every day, we can keep the momentum going forward, especially when we have these big insights in our journeys. So I'm not going to go through all of this, but what I want to particularly focus on, because this is what we're going to do today, is the idea that we can write, and we want to be writing in the flavor or the atmosphere of the perceived benefits of the things that are happening in our life. The perceived, even though things may feel hard or difficult or challenging, or we may feel stuck in a pattern that keeps going round and round and round, the more we can actually go down deeper into and experience the benefits of what's happening in our lives, the more of that sense of being in charge of moving ourselves forward, the more empowered we become. So the idea of focusing towards a life goal, of focusing on the perceived benefits, are very, very important aspects of this journal writing process. So today, again, you can go back and you can look at the full presentation from last time to get more of that science down. But for today, we're just going to do some journal writing, and we're going to work with four particular kinds of techniques. And what I love about journal writing is there's infinite number of possibilities and ways to write. So many of us maybe were aware of Julia Cameron's morning pages, which was a process that she made popular a decade or two ago, when you get up in the morning and you write. I don't remember if there was a timeline or just a 2 or 3 pages where you're just flow writing. So that would be an example of one type of journal writing process, but there are so many that we can utilize. And so tonight, what we're going to do is we're actually going to make use of one that we call list making, which is, it's like what I would imagine most of us are used to making lists. At least I am. I can't get through my day without starting with some kind of list in the morning of this is what I'm going to do. And again, if we think about it, the list making focuses our intention and our attention to very clearly get something moving in the direction. So by making a list of where we want to go, it's very helpful. But list making is also a very powerful journal writing tool. And that's where I'm going to show you how to use that. Then we're going to do something called the reflection write, which utilizes the process of meta-awareness, or actually thinking, right, we've written something or we've worked with something, and then we're going to use the reflection write to go back over it, and then to bring greater awareness or deepen our awareness of what we have just become aware of. And that's called like meta-awareness. So awareness over and above the first level of awareness. Then another tool that we'll be using tonight is prompts. And prompts are useful because they're very different than just floating around and writing whatever comes to mind. They actually, again, prompt us in a certain direction. So we're going to be using them hopefully a powerful way. And then we're going to be doing something from Ira Progoff's work, which is called life chapters. So we're going to position our experience with our journey, or our experience at this moment in our life, in the context of a bigger chapter. So these are 4 that we'll be doing tonight, but we'll be doing many more in upcoming workshops as well. Okay, so with that said, that's the overview. Please have your journals ready, because we're just going to be journaling. And we're going to start with the list making. So what we're going to start with is 2 lists. And what I want you to do is, I'm going to show you in a minute, but I want you to think of having 2 columns. You're going to have a column on the left and a column on the right. And the first column on the left is going to be a list of, and again, it's a list. So at least 20, it can be more. I'm going to give you 10 minutes to do both lists. So in this left-hand column, you're going to write down anything that you remember that comes to mind from your last journey. Now, if you're new to doing this work and you haven't really been journeying, it doesn't matter. You can use anything. You can use a dream. You can use the journey of the past experiences in your life. So a journey from, like, I just sold my house, so I might use the journey from selling my house to this point. I've been on a journey, right? So journey is a word that we can use loosely. So the left-hand column, I want you to write down a list of 20, at least 20 items. And I've given you some ideas to trigger your thinking. So that might be questions you came up with, metaphors, fears, challenges, sounds, symbols, objects, insights, colors, images, sensations. So I'm going to give you actually 5 minutes to do that. Okay. So wrapping that up, we're going to do another list on the right-hand side. And this time it's a list from your life at this point in time. So it can be anything that you think of that's connected to your life. So again, people, places, and things are fine to add in here, and any sensations, images, same idea, colors, insights, metaphors. Just stir up the unconscious and the subconscious and get things on paper. Take a minute to notice how this experience was for you. Were you surprised by some of the awarenesses that maybe came in? So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to write a little bit about what you became aware of as you did this. So this is a reflection process. And you'll notice as we continue this process, using a variety of different techniques, we'll be building on what has been opened up and we'll go deeper with it. I also want to say that the process of doing ongoing and intermittent reflection is a really important process for journal writing. Most of us we write and then we're done, and we're done. So what this process is really about is digging further. So to allow ourselves to write and then reflect back on our write. And so I hope that some of you really got the benefit that came from that reflection that we just did. We made the list and then we reflected. So now I'm going to ask you to look at your list on both sides. And I want you to circle 2 items that were on the left-hand column and circle 2 items that were on the right-hand column. And they may be similar, they may be very different, but allow yourself to go with your intuition. What is calling to you? What stands out? So I'm going to give you 10 minutes, about 10 minutes now, to go ahead and write, just to flesh out and write anything that comes into awareness around the categories that you circled in the left-hand column only. That left-hand column only was the journey. So go ahead and write about the things that you circled around the journey. I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to do that. So if perhaps you are done with that particular writing or it feels complete, just scroll down that left-hand column and see if there's anything else that pulls you or has a charge that you can add to the writing that you started from the left-hand side. I'm going to go right into the second which is the right-hand column, right-hand column has to do with the list you made connected to your life in general. And you circled 2 things from that list. And go ahead and begin to do some writing now. Go deeper into the meaning of those 2 items on that list. I'm going to invite you to go back now and read what you have written from both columns. And go ahead, as you're reading from both columns, bring again that sense of meta-awareness, curiosity, asking yourself, what is it that I have and am receiving from my own unconscious at this point in time? And after you have read through, and you might want to circle certain phrases or things that stand out, go ahead and write a few minutes, a reflection write. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to do all of that. All right, coming to a close. And again, reminding you that every time we write and we allow something to surface from the unconscious, we get a chance to reflect on it because hopefully something new has come into awareness through our writing. So just as a review, we used the two lists, and the first list on the left-hand side was meant to be connected very specifically to a journey. So a recent journey, a psychedelic journey, the one on the right had to do with life, and you then circled phrases and hoping that there was some unconscious connection made between those two lists, between the two experiences that you were having. So that's what we're going for here. It's just some ahas. So if we go down to the next exercise, we can take what we have experienced so far, either with our journey and or with our life, or the combination and the interface between the two, and we can begin to use these prompts. So I'm going to give you, I don't know if it'll be 15 minutes, maybe 10 to 15 minutes to begin to ask yourself these questions. So the first one is, what is dying in me? The second one is, what is birthing in me? Because whenever there's a dying, there's a birthing. What's calling me forward? And what transformation is being asked of me? And of course, we can take as much as an hour to really dive into this, but we're going to do it for about 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. So the last couple of minutes here in this section, you might want to think about or begin to write about adding to this. What's calling me forward? What transformation is being asked of me? What specific action is calling to me? What specifics? So like getting very real in your life around that specific next step. So this particular journal writing starts with a meditation, and it's inspired by the work of Ira Progoff, who's a depth psychologist and was instrumental in helping people utilize their journals to understand and tap into the source energy that lies below the surface of life. So we tend to get very wound up in the things we're accomplishing, the things, our daily chores, even our goals for where we're going in our life. So all of this is on the surface. And what he was a genius in was helping people tap down underneath that surface level to get to the underlying rhythms of what we might call the soul or the spirit life, the essence of who we are that's driving our life force energy. So we're going to take a minute right now and begin that process. So I'll have you close your eyes, and we'll begin by locating our present moment in time, this present moment in time space along a continuum of moments. So at this point, just bringing awareness to the understanding that one of the most amazing things about being a human being is that we have a sense of time. So we can remember where we've been and we can project where we want to go into the future. And I don't know that there are any other species that do this. So at this moment of time, becoming aware that there is a chapter unfolding, a chapter in our own life book, so to speak. And this whole evening, we've been journaling around this chapter, although we haven't named it as such until now. So as we deepen into our breath, and feel our body in time space in this moment, allowing our body to rest into whatever it is that's supporting us, whether it's the chair or the floor or the earth. But just knowing that we can allow ourselves to deeply surrender. And that which is holding us up, will continue to do that. So in this moment, we can allow our body to relax into the movement of life, so to speak, the movement of life that's taking us. And some of us think of it as a river. We can embrace a sense of being lived by life. And the challenge or the invitation is to let the mind go enough to where we can lean into and feel that momentum. So you will notice now as you reach back with your mind that there was a moment in your life where this particular chapter started. And don't overthink it, just allow it to show itself to you. It could be the beginning of a new relationship or a movement from one place to another. Or a decision you made that shifted your life into a different direction. So just notice what comes up right now that wants to be identified as the beginning of this chapter. And as you sense into this chapter of your life, down below the surface of all the busy doing, all the goals or the accomplishments, see if you can feel into what life is asking of you at this time in your life. What is it life is asking of you? Life is calling you towards. Life is asking you to surrender into something new and different. It may be a ripping apart or a tearing apart. It may be a building up. It's almost as if there's something that life wants you to harness or master or let go of. And see if you can find what that is. At this point, so if we travel back in time now to that moment when this chapter began, and we begin to move forward through the circumstances of our life in this chapter, there may be memories, there may be people surfacing, ideas, new insights. Notice them. And as you begin to follow and identify the aspects within and hidden within this chapter, as you feel ready, you can open your eyes and begin to write whatever it is that you notice around this chapter. Thank you to PPS. Thank you to Casey. If anybody, to Kazri and Casey, and if anybody wishes to share a little bit, I'm happy to hear a little bit. I want people to know that there are so many ways of journaling, and that we hope to keep coming back and experimenting with a whole lot of different things to do, ways to be with ourselves in our journals. So I do want to say that there was definitely a piece lost in the not going into breakouts and actually having chances to share with one another. So that's something that we do in Psyalchemy all the time. We go into whatever's coming up. We do a lot of work around how to share and how to create a safe space for sharing. And then when we do these deep writes or deep shares, then they land in a container, and that reflection is a very important part of the process. But we don't do that here on PPS because we don't have a container that is, we haven't prepared the space for the kind of reflections and sharing that we need to have to make it safe for everybody. So I just want to name that. So it's a little bit limited.
And is there a short version of that, Jade, or is that a longer, as far as explaining, because you hinted that there were some instruction about sharing. Is there something you'd like to say now?
Yeah. So we spend a lot of time going over the protocol that creates safe space for sharing in Psyalchemy, and it has a lot to do with just witnessing and reflecting. So very careful to not be giving advice and to not making comments or usurping of one person's share and taking it on oneself. And so there's a lot of guidelines that we put into place, and we practice that. How to be pure, neutral, objective listeners and reflections. And also then if we do want to share from our own experience, then we make that very clear that your share impacted me in this way. And there's like protocol for doing that as well. Because we do impact each other. Our shares are important. They impact each other. But we want to be sure that we say that and that we share back in a way that is very clearly that.
And I would say that would be more than sufficient in creating the container here.
Yeah.
If anyone would like to share, if you want to go ahead and raise your hand, is that okay, Kazri?
Yeah, I was just going to say, hopefully that description didn't intimidate anybody, because here it's sort of, share what I guess I could briefly share that I followed along and did the exercises and found it very, very enlightening. I'm honestly kind of surprised how deep and how impactful it was. I wasn't expecting that.
I do want to add one thing about the sharing. So one of the gifts that I was gifted with, one of the things I was gifted with in my youth when I was working with Ira Progoff in his workshops, actually he created a very meditative, contemplative space that would go on for a week. And one of the things that people would do is they would just stand up and read their writing and in silence, and then they would sit down. So, and there would be a pause so that we would hear the rights of people, and then allowing that spaciousness around each person's to be honored, that sacred space was a very beautiful experience. And yet, so that each person would deeply felt safe to share their soulful experiences in a large group, very, very large group.
Well, I could prime the pump a little bit by saying I noticed that Heather specifically said that she would appreciate some sharing time. Did you have a share, Heather, or were you just curious to see what other people had to say?
Like a little bit of both. When we were like contemplating cutting off at that point, it felt too soon for me. I will go forward with the share. Something that came out for me was that finding and losing come together. My chapter, I'm almost 50. My chapter is chapter 50, connections, just making and building connections in my life. That's, I think, my chapter 50.
Thank you, Heather.
I'll go ahead and share. Jane, I love you. Thank you so much for this. Just really lovely. Last workshop, I was like multitasking and wasn't able to really participate, but I've been present today. And this practice was fabulous for me. And, microdosing journey thing, activity in community thing, like where I'm at with that. So those are my two journeys. And so I'll just say what came out of this for me was this, because it was like there was springtime and flowers, and those were some of the things for me on my lists. And so it was really like this whole story about my life as this beautiful garden, and what is needing to just the whole thing with gardening, weeds, and planting new seeds, the stuff that's coming up from the old bulbs from last year, aka like old stuff my whole lifetime. And so it was just really beautiful. And the thing for me right now is this new chapter of being very intentional with my energy, being very intentional with what my lifescape is, what the higher vision for my lifescape, and being very intentional and specific about that. And it's like this, so like codependency, self-care, and business stuff. So it's like it started like 20 years ago, 15 years ago. So I really appreciated that, looking at that timeline. And yeah, awesome. Thank you. I'm complete.
Thank you so much. This was just incredible. And to the point that I felt like I was having a little bit of a drug experience without anything. But this was very powerful. And I think my question is probably not going to be spelled out very well because it's just welling up, but I was writing about what is birthing in me. And I didn't have too much specific, except that I felt like an adult was birthing in me. I'm 51 years old, and my father, I'm not going to get into the details, but was just a very oppressive figure in my life, cast a very long shadow, and he passed away a year ago. And I'm kind of coming into a new place in my life where I'm trying not to react to old hurts, but be more intentional and look forward, which is something I always had trouble doing in my life. I guess I'm coming at this very new, I took some trips in college, but it's been, don't even want to think about how long, 32 years. I guess my question was, everything was so general, thinking about the adult coming out, and I couldn't see who that adult was yet. There's just so much uncertainty and so much unformed. And I think it's exciting, and there's a positive way in which I'm just getting in touch with all sorts of new things. But there's also, a slight anxiety I have. And my plan was to maybe really keep my doses low or wait until the fall and take, your seminar, your workshop. But it's a strange time. I'm trying to figure out if this is a really fertile time to jump in or a time to kind of be a little cautious because there's so much unknown right now.
Alice, are you asking me a specific question about timing?
A little bit. I mean, about timing and dosing and just, that's maybe too specific that maybe you can't answer that, but just thinking about, this being at such a transitional time in my life when a lot has been coming up for me. In terms of thinking that I'm now at a place where for the first time in my life, I'm not defining myself against somebody else, my dad. I'm not, a wall has fallen down. And I remember 30 years ago, a therapist said, I want you to imagine what your life would be like without your dad. She was already trying to get me to do that work and I wasn't ready for it. And I told her, all I can imagine when that wall comes down is nothing, just nothing. And now I'm starting to see an adult taking shape, which is really odd to say at age 50, but I'm a psychologically formed adult who's responsible for setting intentions and responsible for the course that life goes a little bit, and I guess it's just, I'm really both excited and nervous. It just was a very powerful thing coming up, both the excitement and the nerves during this journaling exercise.
Yeah, I think that sounds amazing that you're not alone. I would say that many of us don't even become adults in this life. A book is coming to my mind, Alice, for you, and that is Bill Plotkin's Soulcraft was maybe his first one, but then he's written one that's more recent, but I think you could do well with either of them, but he really does talk about the transition to true adulthood and what's entailed in that. So I would suggest him as an author. And just in terms, I would just give yourself a lot of space. It sounds like to me that there's a lot emerging and there's nothing to rush. It's like, I love the curiosity and allowing the timing of all that unfolding, that new birthing that's happening, this new adult that's being born. I think it's beautiful.
Thank you so much.
I think a lot of people could relate to still being a baby or a child in a big body. Yeah, so I'm pretty actively crying, so feeling a little too tender to go on camera. That's just in itself beautiful that you took, you had really good boundaries and self-care for yourself. But I had a very good realization. My current chapter started back in 2017. Multiple relationships ended and I felt at fault. So I kind of went away. Like I had other parts of myself start living my life for me, but they were meant to support me living my life, not to live it themselves. I realized I need to trust myself again and risk living my own life instead of hiding behind these other parts of me. It's really scary, but I'm feeling hopeful. The fact that I am actively crying is honestly a really good sign. I've needed to cry for a really long time. That's beautiful. Thank you, Emily. Yeah, witnessing is really important part of this whole process. So being witnessed as we grow and as we emerge into the butterflies we are, we just don't get enough of that beautiful witnessing. For both the wounded parts and the essence as it begins to flourish, we need to be witnessed in all of it. So thank you.
I think Heather said there was something about finding and losing coming together. And I've just been really considering the Joni Mitchell song, Both Sides Now. And there's this lyric in there that's about something's lost, but something's gained in living every day. And it's just really sitting with me lately. I don't know, something about that. I had to listen to it. And in it, there's so many metaphors. And so when the metaphors came out today, those felt really real with the clouds. And I don't know, something just, I really appreciate, Heather, you talking about the finding and losing and the duality in that, and I don't know, the unity in that, that felt really powerful for me.
Yeah. Thank you, Shannon. Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do. I won't know until the time comes. So it'll just be another iteration of some kind of journaling that will mix and match a whole bunch of different exercises together, see what comes out of it.
Excellent. Well, we really appreciate you being here and sharing your expertise and leading everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for staying on.